Welcome everyone to absolute StarCraft 2 madness. A while ago I made this video where I tried beating Grandmasters by only using one unit type at a time. There were only two fighting units not included in that video, the Medevac, which for some unknown reason just didn't quite work out, and the Raven, which after a battery of nerfs was left with very weak auto turrets and weakened extra abilities. After making this video, however, I kept feeling like maybe winning with Ravens only would be possible if I just gave it enough attempts. So here we are. I'll be using the same rules as for the tech units in that video, meaning that I'm allowed to make 1 Reaper and 5 Marines, just to make sure I don't die to a single Reaper or 4 Zerglings or something like that, and besides that, only Ravens. This is gonna be freaking epic, so get ready. Our opponent for today is going to be Baby Marine, a Terran player who is not just a regular Grandmaster, but actually pretty high up at about 5.9k MMR, which is about top 50 Grandmaster on Europe. Now, for this specific challenge against Terran, I thought that there was, well, honestly, in every matchup, there's only one real way to ever win a game like this, and that's first of all by getting a pretty decent early game, which in this case obviously means I can't really be dealing out any damage, so I'm gonna have to find another way to get a good early game, which is pretty much by being greedy or by being a little cheesy with the Raven, something like that. And then you're gonna have to go in a massive macro game where you probably build 5,000 planetaries and 5 million turrets and just fly your Ravens everywhere. Because like I said in the intro, the auto turrets right now are kind of weak. They are mostly, or well, what it feels like, I was gonna say mostly made out of paper, like that was a factual thing. Like I found the freaking blueprints of the auto turrets and they were like, yeah, let's make this out of paper. No, but that's what it actually feels like. Like if you drop auto turrets in front of your opponent's units, before they had a little bit of staying power. Like it's not like you could drop them in front of a bunch of siege tanks and they would do good, but they would do at least all right. Now they just disappear instantly. Now my first unit is gonna pop out of the barracks, so I'm just gonna say this again. I know there's a bunch of you guys that skip the rules and then complain about not knowing the rules later on in the video. Like, why did he make a Reaper? I'm allowed to make 1 Reaper and 5 Marines just so I don't die to the enemy Reaper. Because as you can see, I literally would have died to that 1 Reaper if I wasn't allowed to make one. These units are not gonna show up in my opponent's base to absolutely annihilate him with some kind of sick timing. I'll have like a little bit of scouting with the Reaper. Though honestly, I don't really care about the scouting with the Reaper because I'm gonna make Ravens anyway, right? Like, there's not really much I can do, but I just want to at least pretend that I'm playing somewhat of a normal game. Here, I'm also flying over my factory. That's actually a pretty cool mind game that I did here. I'm not quite sure if you guys realized. I'm flying over the factory to make my opponent think I was gonna make Cyclones or Hellions, even though, you know, he doesn't know that at this point, but that's obviously a unit that I'm not allowed to build. Then I'm gonna go for a bunker, and this SCV is already up to no good. I'm gonna be proxying a starport. Now, I think this is a very important part for this specific challenge. If you ever want to beat your opponents with something crazy like this, you really have to start going fast, because the earlier in the game you manage to deal economic damage, the more valuable it's gonna be. My plan here is that I'll just send Ravens from the proxy at the start. Hopefully I can kill maybe even up to 10 SCVs, get myself into an economic lead, and that's gonna make up for having to do or having to build such an atrocious unit composition for later on in the game, right? Now this is all the units that I'm allowed to build. I decided for this challenge to not allow myself to rebuild them either. So if I would lose these Marines, I would not rebuild them. From this point on, I'm literally just gonna make SCVs, mules, obviously, and Ravens. Now this Reaper is gonna get a little bit of a scout. Once again, this is really not gonna be too meaningful, but at least at this point, my opponent, from his POV, I'm still playing normal, which is very important. As soon as he would scout my natural, it would already start looking a little weird with this depot wall I have going on, just so you guys know that it's just not something you build against Terran, because why the hell would you make a depot wall when your opponent has siege tanks? But for now, it still looks like I'm playing normal. I think I have him completely convinced. I even put the factory on the reactor after finishing my Marine count, just to, I don't know, make it look like I have a plan of some sort. Now, I'm not quite sure if you guys noticed that, but I'm sending out an SCV to the corner of the map. And that's because I want to try go for hidden bases. Like, this is one thing against Terran that's going to be extra difficult with this challenge, is that if I was playing against Zerg, for example, Zerg players tend to drone up really heavily and then later on start making units. So against Zerg, you're going to have a little bit more of the 5 command center setup. You guys might have heard me say that before if you've watched any of my challenges, is where I like to just make 5 command centers and make 3 planetaries instantly, completely locking down the game. But against Terran, you can't really do that because Terrans build units and SCVs at the same time, so they tend to just have an army at all times already, pretty much. So you can't just lift your command centers unless your opponent for some reason never decides to attack. But especially considering my opponent is at least hopefully going to be losing some SCVs here. He should be going for a counterattack at some point, so I really thought going for hidden bases was the best play. He did already notice my SCV going to the bottom left, but he caught it really early with his Reaper Hellions, so I'm not quite sure he realized fully what was going on there, which would be very nice. Now here's Raven number 2, at least in the main base. Now the plan I had here was to actually get a planetary up in my natural as well. Like, for now, it seems like my Ravens are dealing a decent amount of damage. I think I killed 3 SCVs and maybe 1 Marine there or something. But it's going to be always a little bit annoying for my opponent to deal with, right? Like, when you're taking damage, it does something to you psychologically. Like, he doesn't have to take that much damage, but just the fact that here he has to run his SCVs around, he's already lost a couple SCVs, like, it really feels like you're taking a lot of damage here, so he's going to be more tempted to go for a counterattack. Here I'm going to kill this siege tank, because that tank does not, or it can't attack that close up, so that tank is going to die pretty much for free. He tried to snipe my Raven there. I didn't realize they were that close, but it's actually going to survive on the 1 HP, which is really nice. And here I'm going to go for another hidden expansion. Now, the damage is really starting to stack up here for him. Like, it's not a crazy amount of damage yet, but in TVT, I have talked about this before. TVT is a relatively low economy matchup, because you often start with a double gas opener. You often want to get a pretty big army even before going for a 3rd command center. So losing SCVs in this matchup is a little more painful than in the other. So the fact that I've killed a couple of things here and there already, he's definitely not going to like that. Now here I'm going to try to microwave his Raven. You could tell that he tried to target it, going to kill a Marine for that. I don't see any units over here. And this moment in this game was really funny for me. I'm not quite sure if you guys noticed the same thing. But what I noticed was that our opponent had a Ghost Academy. Now a Ghost Academy is a building that you quite literally never build in TVT. There's only one reason to build Ghost Academies in TVT, and that's because you're playing against an absolute baboon who's going to make only Ravens. Which, to me, I thought was really funny, because normally, with the amount of Ravens our opponent has seen, it is not even too outlandish, right? Like, it's a lot of Ravens for sure. It's a pretty crazy thing to go up against. But it's also not like he's seen 20 Ravens and he knows I'm never going to build anything else. But I think because he's played against me before, a particular amount against my challenges, by the way. Even when I was playing Protoss and Zerg, I played against him a decent amount. And, you know, with those races, I also play like an absolute baboon. It feels like he caught on to the fact that I was going to play something ridiculous, like only make Ravens for the rest of the games pretty fast, because there's no other way he ever would have started making Ghost already. Now, this is exactly the start you want. The Ghost, I admittedly wasn't super happy seeing them. You guys might remember a game I played against NA streamer Jason a long time ago. I think it was a game that was like over an hour long. I was doing not an only Raven challenge, but I think it might have been Raven Widowmine or Raven Hellion or something along those lines. And he ended up playing Mass Ghost, and it was incredibly hard to deal with, because Ravens, they're not just an energy-only unit. They also are an air unit, which means they clump up a very uncomfortable amount. So EMPs are going to be absolutely freaking brutal here. Now, that was actually a cute little moment where I dropped an auto turret to kill 1 Marine. You guys might have thought that was not too meaningful, but that's going to delay him scouting that hidden expansion in the corner for quite a while, right? Like, he's going to want to scout that. That Marine pathing really, you know, left no question in my mind. He is aware that there's going to be hidden bases, and he's going to be trying to check for them. He's most likely going to, yeah, exactly, check that with... That seemed like a fast unit, because he arrived very quickly there. Could have been a Reaper or a Hellion in the bottom left, and now he's going to scout the top right as well. Indeed, it was a Hellion. And that base is pretty much forfeit. My Ravens are on the top right, so he's not going to be able to kill that so far, or for now. But the bottom left is definitely going to be screwed. Now, all I want to do at this point really is just make more planetaries and turrets and more Ravens, and that's going to be the name of the game forever. The biggest problem is just going to be dealing with a larger scale army, because I really think Ravens are always going to be pretty good at harassment. Maybe at some point, if there's going to be a lot of missile turrets up, the Ravens are not going to be that effective at harassing anymore. But until that point, the Ravens are going to be fantastic at harassing. We just cannot really fight an army. Even a relatively small stimmed army is going to be pretty painful to fight against. That was a really cool move by the opponent there. Credit where credit's due, of course. He had a freaking Ghost standing on that high ground. He knew I would be pulling my Ravens to defend this base, and he EMP'd a ton of Ravens already. Now, the truth is, I have killed more units than I probably should have at this point. Like, I've killed, I think, maybe like 2 or 3 tanks already. I killed a bunch of Marines, and I think I even killed 1 Ghost. That Planetary is going to pop the frick off there, by the way. So my opponent's army is going to be relatively small, and I don't have to worry about it yet. I did really, even though I was a little scared, I did enjoy seeing my opponent make all the right moves here. Like, this really feels like he's up to the challenge. He knows what the hell is going on, and he's going to do everything to beat my specific challenge here. Like, he started making ghosts right away. And if you guys noticed, he was also starting to make random missile turrets on the map right away. Like, he realized as soon as I had maybe like 8 Ravens or so in this game, that I was not going to make anything else besides Ravens. And now, funnily enough, in that moment, he was the one killing my stuff with Ravens because I ran out of energy. And I think he might have 1 EMP there. I would love to kill every single ghost I can kill. There I killed a full energy Raven, which is pretty freaking massive, by the way. And what's also going to be cool about this game is you're going to be seeing me do Raven splits, which is, you know, obviously not something you would normally do. But if you have 500 Ravens against a bunch of ghosts, that is, you know, some of the skills that you're going to have to use. Here I'm going to be able to take down at least 1 more Raven. He didn't move them right away, so I'm going to kill 2 Ravens. That is not the most meaningful pick-off ever, which sounds crazy because normally killing 2 high energy Ravens, or it doesn't even matter what kind of energy they have, but killing 2 Ravens is pretty freaking massive. That's an expensive unit, but here it's obviously going to be way more about the Ghost, way more about the actual standing army than about the Ravens. I mean, he can throw some auto turrets now and then, kill my SCVs, but my economy is already pretty good. It doesn't really matter. Now, what you guys are seeing me do here, that's going to be an absolute staple for this challenge, which is that if I ever want to fight, I will have to drop auto turrets before the fight every time. Like, at this point, when my opponent's going to have upgrades, I don't have any upgrades at all. I'm just getting the upgrades for the auto turrets and for the buildings, by the way. Building armor, extra range for the missile turrets, and at some point, I can get armor for the Ravens, though it's not going to be as important. My opponent's going to have upgrades already, so his army is just going to destroy my auto turrets every time. But if the auto turrets are already down on the ground, he's not going to want to run into them. So the only way for me to take fight throughout this challenge is to just drop the auto turrets before he gets there every time, which is going to require, and that was me attempting to split my Ravens. A little bit of a warm-up there. Not the best splits ever, but in the end, we got a nice concave. But that's the only way I'm going to be able to fight throughout this challenge. I'm going to have to drop the auto turrets every single time. Now you can tell my opponent is starting to build a lot of missile turrets everywhere, which is going to make it significantly harder for me to do any damage. I would say, since my opponent is on a comfortable 4 bases, maybe 5, I barely can't see if there's a command center in that top middle side over there. If he's on 5 bases, that's definitely too much. I think even 4 bases might be too much already. Like a 4-base economy, let's say 70 workers or so, that is probably going to be too much economy for me to deal with. Like, he's going to be able to max out pretty comfortably and fight against a maxed army without having a really absurd amount of planetaries. That's just never going to be pleasant. Now, this army looked relatively small, so you can tell I'm kind of trying to zone in on fighting this army already. He's going to get some EMPs off, but like, once again, the EMPs are always going to be brutal because the Raven is a unit that just clumps up a lot, as you can see. At this point, he's out of EMPs. I'm just going to kill whatever I can. Not going to be that much, sadly, but these are the opportunities we have to grab. And I'm really going to try to get my planetaries everywhere. And that's the one thing about the Raven that is actually going to be very strong here. I feel like for the most part, I'm talking about what's difficult about this challenge because, you know, it's just a lot. There's a lot of things that are going to be freaking difficult here. But what the Raven is so good at is that you only attack with energy. So you do get a lot of efficiency through them. Like, for example, throwing down 20 auto turrets to kill a command center is a very good move because that energy is going to recharge. If I have my defenses up around the map like planetaries and stuff, I'm going to keep my Ravens alive while they are recharging, and then I can just kill command centers and stuff. I think killing command centers is some of the best things I can do in this game because really, if I could, I would never let my opponent get more than 3 bases. I don't think that's going to be able, you know, to come to fruition because his army is massive. He's going to be using it well. Keep in mind, this is a pretty high Grandmaster Terran, so I'm never going to be able to deny that many bases. But if I could, I would choose to never let him get past 3 bases. Now, at this point, his army is becoming sizable enough with a lot of ghosts that I'm going to be splitting up my Ravens here. I think the EMPs, they honestly are just a little bit too brutal. Like, if I ever get, I don't know, how many Ravens do I have at this point? I want to guess that I have 80 workers, which leaves supply for, I believe, 60 Ravens. I'm not quite sure if I still have those Marines. I might have not given away the bunker yet, so that could be a small mistake by me. I mean, it's just 5 supply that could be, you know, holed up in Marines, but it's also not going to be that bad. Now, one thing that is really nice about his army composition, by the way, I know it seems like it's the best counter ever. His army composition is not good against planetaries. There are very little tanks. At least, I think I've killed a bunch of them. That probably contributed a decent amount. But besides that, his army is going to be Marine Ghost. That is a pretty funny interaction here. Trying to kill a planetary with auto turrets is not the most pleasant thing I've ever done. But in the end, it looks like we are going to get it. I'm going to kill all the SCVs as well as the planetary, and that's going to be a pretty good trade. Keep in mind, that was my opponent's 4th base. So even though it didn't seem entirely efficient, we kill a very important base there. And in the meantime, I mean, that planetary is going to die extremely slowly. And at this point, how many bases do I have? Like 8 or something? I know they're not like super efficiently mining, but I do have way more economy than the opponent. And that is just the name of the game. I'm just going to keep trying to spam planetaries everywhere. If you play a composition like this, where you're going to go mass Raven, where it's very gas expensive, you guys might notice from playing a mech style, is that you always are going to have extra minerals. That's why when you see someone playing mech, they'll very often have just a ridiculous amount of turrets. Like, it could even be like 50 missile turrets on the map or something. Now here what I'm going to try to do is just use the interference matrix. I think I barely have enough auto turrets to clean this up, and that's exactly why I want to split the Ravens. The energy on the left flank was entirely gone, but I still had the right flank with barely enough turrets, and even though those EMPs hurt, we managed to kill the siege tanks. And like I said, the rest of his army is weak against planetaries. He cannot stop my bases from mining if it's not for the siege tanks, and those are going to be pretty expensive to replace, especially considering his lack of bases. Now, sadly for me, he did find that little hole where I was trying to make 3 extra command centers, and we're going to be able to kill... Oh, I don't actually have that much energy here. I guess it's just a ridiculous amount of Raven. I think we're barely going to be able to kill this. I hope we are, but it doesn't seem like it. Yeah, that is the power of EMP there, guys. Like, I need to kill those bases, but I'm just a little bit out of energy. Here, I barely have enough auto turrets because of the extra Ravens coming in from the bottom, so we're going to kill these tanks as well. And these trades, I know that... excuse me. I know these trades don't seem like the best trades ever, right? That's probably an understatement. They probably seem pretty bad. I think I'm actually very happy with them, because what's happening is he is splitting up his tank forces. Like, at this point, I think he easily could have had one big army with 7 tanks that would have been almost unstoppable. In that case, we also would have had different tactics. Like, instead of splitting up the Ravens to do damage, we would have just gone for a full base trade, right? But it would have been very, very scary, and now we've already killed 5 siege tanks, which means his army is not going to be that scary anymore. I even have a planetary up pretty freaking close to his base on the top middle side there. That is pretty much right next to his, well, I guess 5th base. He probably did retake that planetary that I killed earlier on the left side. Not quite sure if we're going to be able to take this army down, unfortunately, but I guess we'll find out at some point. That's another very painful EMP. God, the EMPs are so brutal against Ravens. It's like... I think because your army doesn't die to the EMP, you don't quite realize the effect. But every EMP could remove like 40 of my army supply from the fight, right? Because they just... Look at that EMP right there. I think that might be like 25 Ravens that now cannot do anything. Like, it's actually brutal. But at least we don't lose the army. And we killed another 4 siege tanks, which is absolutely massive. Like, every time the siege tanks die, that means my planetary is just going to stay alive for a couple more minutes, which is just awesome, right? Now, building armor, I just want to say, is absolutely key here, by the way. Building armor is so freaking good. It really helps your planetary stay alive, in particular against the Marines. If I didn't have building armor, he might even consider stimming on top of the planetary with his Marines, but for now, that is just not really going to be an option. Now, as long as I have the planetaries on the top side, I will always be able to retrieve these Ravens. These is very tempting. Honestly, I was watching this right now and I could tell that it was a bad idea. So I'm definitely not going to do that again. I was like, I really want this planetary location, but instead I'm going to have to give it up. Lost a couple of Ravens there, but I'm rich enough that is not the biggest deal. And this is going to open the left side up for a little bit of a counterattack again. And let's see what we can kill. He didn't replace this with a planetary. And that is really good news, because the fact that that is not a planetary could very well mean that this is his main base we're looking at. This could mean that he flew over his main orbital to this location, which means he's running out of command centers. I'm not 100% sure yet, but I felt like if it was a new command center, he would have made it into a planetary. And that is pretty much the first sign that he's running out of money here. I mean, if you look at his army, even though we've killed a lot, I have to guess his army is still pretty close to max, probably at least 170 supply. I think I saw over 10 ghosts there, which is going to mean my army's always going to have a tough time in the fights. And I think the base on the top wasn't a planetary, right? I was going to say we lost a planetary for the first time in a while, but I think that was just an orbital, actually. I really don't think that just one tank with Marines ghosts would have pushed through that out easily. He definitely would have lost a couple ghosts there at least. Ghosts, by the way, particularly bad against the planetaries. It's not even just the Marines that are bad against it, but the ghosts are actually particularly bad. Because ghosts are pretty much only good against light targets when it comes to the auto attack, and against energy targets, and against biological targets. A lot of things, but not a planetary, that's for sure. Now there we're gonna kill another command center. Like, I can't stress enough how important killing the command centers is. At this point, I think it's very possible that our opponent has less than 5 command centers, maybe even like just 3 or 4. Well, I probably have like 15 or something. I have half of them not even hotkeyed because the game is just a little bit too freaking hectic. But I can definitely confirm that we're gonna have a lot more command centers than the opponent throughout this game, and that already started. Definitely gonna be able to kill this one as well. Going to use an interference matrix to just stop that tank from killing 5 million auto turrets. Now you could think that a move like this... Oh, I saw a couple ghosts there and I got so scared. I was like, oh my god, I have to split. Thank goodness I split in time, because that could have been painful. Now you could think this kind of move is extremely risky, but even if I lose 15 Ravens to kill a base and a lot of units, that's worth it. We're gonna kill all of those ghosts. Those Vikings are not gonna die because they're a little bit too fast. Now this is getting a little scary. Ghosts are faster than you think. You would think I can fly away with these Ravens for free, but these ghosts can actually catch up pretty fast, so we might be surrounded there in that corner. But once again, we killed another command center, we got a couple high-value targets in a ghost, and that is going to be awesome. And here I found out how fast the ghosts really are. Now, thank goodness I have this planetary, because without this planetary, these ghosts would chase me down. Keep in mind, Ravens are actually light units, by the way. So ghosts do an incredible amount of damage to the Ravens, pretty much the opposite to what I was saying about the planetary earlier. Ghosts can absolutely destroy Ravens. They EMP them first of all, so you get no abilities, and then they do double damage against the Ravens themselves. Now, this planetary, I got range on it. It has armor. It's probably not going to be broken because we killed enough siege tanks, and it's going to keep the ghost at bay for now. That's why I'm hiding the Ravens over here. He's trying to use his Vikings to get a little closer and deal damage. I'm actually not so afraid of the Vikings, because whenever the Vikings get close, I feel like you just drop 2 auto turrets. The Vikings are decent enough against them when they're landed, but when the Vikings are in the air, they obviously can't shoot the auto turrets, and they will take a lot of damage. Now, this base is probably not going to die because of that siege tank. I ran out of auto turrets just a little bit too early. Maybe it would have been better for me to just ignore the mineral line and kill the tanks over there, but I guess you never know. Now, here he was trying to get closer, and he almost lost the ghost to the planetary right away, so that's the value of that planetary right there. Now, my SCV count is actually kind of down the drain here. Like, I know we look rich because we have bases everywhere, including, like, looking at the map, maybe like 4 or so extra defensive planetaries. Like, if you look at the map, those little freaking blocks that are just around the map, those are all extra planetaries that I don't... well, they're not going to help my economy. They're just going to help me defend against pushes through the middle in particular. Now, let's see. At this point, I would say we probably have... maybe like 50 SCVs or so, which means we are going to be at about 75 Ravens, which is a pretty freaking crazy Raven count. Here we're going to be able to kill another base. Though I do have to admit, I did not enjoy seeing that base there. This was a really big moment, by the way. I knew I could distract him with the auto turrets at the top, and that means we're going to kill every single Viking over there. I know the Ravens got EMP again, but that is 6 Vikings down the drain, guys. That is 900 minerals. Really not to be understated. But that base on the top right, the reason why I wasn't happy seeing it is... not because it was there, because that means I could just kill it for pretty much free or just for trading energy, which is really nice. But it means that he had more command centers than I thought. That tank was actually in range of the planetary, which is really funny. And here we're going to be able to kill another couple siege tanks, which means that this planetary is going to stay alive forever, basically. Now, I was looking for SCVs to repair it, but I didn't find any. So I just ended up sending the 2 sad SCVs that I had to just rebuild the turrets over there. Now, I think because of how recently we killed his left side 4th base, as well as the natural and 3rd base, by the way, he might actually not have rebuilt it yet. If that is the case, I will be very happy with our economic situation. If he does have that base on the left, I would suddenly be sad. Because if you look at the top side of the map, he does have 2 fully mining bases right now, which is probably a little more than I'd like him to have. Once again, guys, we look like we're rich. But in total mineral income, we are probably just about at 2 bases. Like, normally if you have this many command centers, you have a lot of orbitals, right? And you're going to be able to drop a ton of meals. I don't actually have that many orbitals, and I need to use a lot of scans. So my economy is not that crazy. Luckily for me, I am mining from a lot of gases. That's where my economy is significantly better than this. I'm mining from a lot of gases. So I will be able to afford ravens whenever I lose them. At this point, I'm maxed on ravens, so I don't even need any others. And here we are once again going to be able to kill a lot of Viking. I love these moves where I just distract him on one side and then I manage to jump on top of units that you would think could even kill me. Now this is the kind of plays that I want to make. He's going to try chase me down because he really wants the ravens, but he's going to lose a couple of units for it, which is really nice for me. There we go. Even a couple of marines. Like, marines are not that big of a deal, but even killing marines is pretty nice for energy. Now, at this point, I was starting to feel a little bit more, like, I wouldn't say desperate, but I realized it would be a good time to go for some more plays. Like, the game was stabilizing a bit too much for my taste. Notice how he felt like stimming through those auto turrets, but he instantly lost a couple of units and he backed off. And then this is exactly the what was it, the word I'm looking for? The dynamic between mass ravens and the army he has. Notice how when I had the auto turrets already dropped, he tried to stim in, he lost units. Then I tried to drop him on his army because I had a lot, and then they all of a sudden did absolutely nothing. Like, really, you know, the person who pretty much is in attacking position first will get a good trade. But what I wanted to say earlier, it's not like I'm feeling desperate, but the game was stabilizing too much, and I feel like I needed to go for some plays here. Even if that means I'm gonna... How the hell did that tank stay alive, by the way? That's actually freaking crazy to me. But I felt like I needed to go for some plays and more trades. If my opponent stabilizes on 3 mining bases, which he very well could be on right now, even 4, he's just going to get too much money. His army is going to be too efficient, and he will be able to rebuild it, and then we're just in massive trouble. So this is what I really wanted to do, just fly through with my ravens, create a lot of chaos. That way I'm going to be able to get more planetaries on the map too. Ideally, that one base that I'm missing on, I guess, the bottom middle side, close to my 5th base. That's it. I know there's a lot of bases going to be hard to track, but this is exactly the chaos of I saw. He thought he was going to be safe because he had so many tanks here with all these turrets, but I have enough ravens that I can just go for this. Interference matrices, so none of the tanks are going to shoot, and that is 6 tanks dying, guys. That is an absolutely massive moment, especially because I see on the minimap now that he did have that base on the left side retaken. We're going to be able to take down 6 tanks, a lot of missile turrets, as well as one of those command centers, I believe. And this was a really, really big moment. I mean, if you look at the money, guys, we still do have 6,000 minerals and 3,000 gas. Well, we just spent a lot of it building 3 command centers and a couple of ravens, but we do still have a lot of money. And trades like that are very, very good for now. But even more than the trades, I'm just happy with the chaos. What I know from the games I played earlier, for example, the game I mentioned earlier against Jason, is that if the game gets a little too... I wouldn't say easy, but if the opponent gets too much oversight over the map, like let's say he's rich enough to get sensor towers everywhere and there's going to be turrets everywhere as well as a bunch of siege tanks, it does become a bit too comfortable for him to play because he knows in theory how to defeat my army, but if he doesn't have the position on the map for it, that's going to be a whole lot more difficult, and I just want to keep making chaos. Here I'm trying to create a situation. Notice how he was losing, I think at least one goes there on the left side. I'm just trying to create that situation where he's the one attacking into the auto turrets. Not in the ravens, but into the auto turrets already. Here, this was actually really unfortunate. I was trying to interference matrix the ghost, but I'm not quite sure if I either didn't have enough energy or I just pressed the wrong button or something. But I couldn't get the matrices off on the ghost. I don't think it was a good idea anyway. Now I'm looking at how many ravens I had. The auto turrets were not going to be good enough. But that was the play I was going to go for here. But we do finally lose that base on the bottom left side, and that is going to be a bit of a hit to our economy. You can notice our gas bank is slowly starting to become more dry. At this point, we could rebuild about 10 ravens. It's really... I'm still used to the raven being 200 gas, but since they nerfed it, it's only 150 gas now, I believe. So we can make about 10 ravens now. And... I mean, 10 ravens in a normal game, that sounds pretty good. But here, at this point, I already have like 70. I don't want to lose them all and only be able to rebuild 10. That is not that good. And now we see our opponent has managed to get another base on the left side as well. Is that a planetary? He got a planetary here too. This is actually the scariest position we have been in this game. I know we killed a lot of siege tank. We killed an entire base and turrets. But looking at the minimap, our opponent has 4... either fresh or relatively fresh bases, and he has a big army, and we are below 1,000 gas. I think this is the first moment where I was thinking, Okay, maybe now we're starting to get a little bit of trouble. I'm gonna need something else. In particular, I really need... Well, first of all, I want the base on the bottom left back, but I also want that base that he's denying right now. You can see it on the minimap. That base is a completely fresh base that I really want. But luckily for me, he sent his entire army to deal with that, which means I'm gonna kill 2 of his bases, including a planetary, which is a really massive pickoff. Like, at some point, he is gonna run out of economy, right? Like, at some point. I know it seems like it's never gonna happen because I've already killed so much, but this is gonna be another 3 command centers dead of a potential just 5. If he doesn't have any spare command centers, which I think he might actually not because he's had to replace so many, it's possible he does actually only have 2 command centers right now, both on the left side, which would be absolutely massive for us. I'm going to be able to retake this planetary. We're going to make turrets there because he does have a lot of Vikings. We do have the base in the top right. Notice how most of my mineral lines look absolutely pathetic, by the way, where there's just like nothing mining, but I still have 5,000 minerals because I'm just only making ravens, so you don't need that many minerals. Now, the reason why I went so hard on the auto turrets here It's just because I really want that planetary up there. Now, at this point, I noticed that there's a couple things I can do. I mean, first of all, I'm going to try to kill those tanks because that is, you know, always going to be really nice. But what I thought was he replaced his... I think he might actually be building that command center. You can see it on the minimap, one of the bases I killed earlier, the planetary. It seems like he is rebuilding that one. He could have landed a new one, but I didn't see one fly over, I believe. I mean, it's very chaotic and hectic, so I'm not quite sure if that's the case, but I think he's probably building that on location. So I thought it would be all right for me to trade 1 for 1. He's going to be able to kill that command center on the bottom if he pushes for it. But if he does, I'm going to be able to deny this economy one more time. And I can even get access to the rest of his base. Like, that's also a bunch of production that I can kill, right? Which is going to be very nice. I still have that planetary up very close to where he's attacking now. I have one planetary that's going to be able to delay his marine push by a lot. Sadly, Okay, I thought he was going to cancel that command center too, but it doesn't look like it. And this was a little bit of a painful moment. I assumed wrongly that his entire army was still on the bottom side, but he only pushed forward with a small part of his army to cancel the command center that I was building. And in the meantime, he sent the rest of his army back, which led to a lot. Probably like 50 plus low energy ravens. Now at this point, I think I lost even more SCVs. I wouldn't be surprised if we have over 70 ravens right now. Like, we could actually have the 75 ravens again, which is insane. I don't think I have any in production. Maybe I do, not 100% sure. But we do have a very healthy raven count. The gas count, I really want to see it be higher still, because realistically, if we trade army for army, his army should win in efficiency by a decent amount, and then I have to rebuild the ravens. Like, keep in mind, guys, I also have to win the game with the ravens. If he has like a couple units left at the end, I will still need enough auto turrets to push them through, which might be possible, but not if he has a lot of tanks. In that case, I will need a lot of ravens. Now I'm just going to use any opportunity that I have here. He's going to try to target down ravens, but I'm going to kill 4 marines for it, which I'm very, very happy with. Now we do see a command center flying over to the right side, as well as a command center taking place in the bottom side. Now here, there's going to be a lot of ghosts. I already see them coming, so what I'm going to do, throw an entire missile and just spam auto turrets. These fights, I freaking love them. If he wants to fight into my ravens, I'm always going to be pretty, or into the auto turrets, right? I'm always going to be pretty happy with it. And this way, I'm also creating a path for me to escape with. And guys, notice on the minimap, I have my second squad of ravens exactly waiting on the bottom side, which means I am going to be able to kill this tank and, more importantly, that entire command center. Now, this base over here is also an orbital, guys, so I don't even need that many auto turrets to kill it, which is really, really nice for me. The planetaries, they take so many auto turrets to kill, but the orbitals are really not so bad. I think maybe, what would it be, like 15 auto turrets to kill it before it times out? Like, it really is not a crazy amount. So we kill a bunch of SCVs there. This is when I got really scared, because for some reason in my head, like, this game was so chaotic, I really thought that I had a planetary over there, but I didn't. Judging by the supply, I didn't even lose that many ravens there, surprisingly. It looked like I lost about 5, and honestly, if I lost 20, I also wouldn't be surprised, you know? Like, that really looked like it was going to be messed up, but the split on the ravens did me well. Now, here, he moved his army just a little bit too far away from the siege tanks, which means I'm going to be able to take care of the siege tanks. If his army was there, that would have been scary. But now we managed to kill the tanks. which means this planetary is going to stay alive forever, and we're going to be able to retake that gas, trying to retake the base on the bottom left side as well. Now, he does have that one base pretty close, the one we saw fly over recently. This was a very ambitious planetary attempt by me. I mean, if I can get a planetary fortress up next to his base, that would be absolutely fantastic, but sadly, I don't think that is going to happen. Now, I'm just going to keep going for the run bys. If you guys have noticed, these moves have been the absolute best moves that I can make, by the way. Like, it sounds crazy to fly by with a bunch of ravens against an army that is 100% the counter to mine. But it seems like that way I create the chaos, so whenever I do it, I find extreme value on another side of the map. And he really wants to kill my ravens, so he tends to stim forward into the auto turrets a lot of times. Now, this base is very dry, and I think now we definitely should be able to kill it. Last time we weren't able to. This time it should definitely die, so there we go. Now, I've been trying to make predictions on how few command centers he has all this time, and I don't think I've corrected it accurately a single time. At some point, I thought he had 2 left, and then I think it was probably more like 7 or something, or maybe he just rebuilds them faster than I think. But it does seem like he is running very dry on money. Notice how these barracks are not producing, for example. The factory is not producing. The units that were produced were Marines, which is the cheapest unit. So it does seem like at least he's out of gas, and he probably is out of money in general. Like, his army does not look maxed anymore to me. It looks more like maybe like 160 supply or so. Like, it's a big army, but it definitely doesn't seem maxed. Now here, taking a couple of slightly questionable trades, let's put it very mildly, in multiple locations at once. Here there's a random squad with a bunch of medevacs. I think because of the auto turrets, one of those medevacs might have died with ghosts inside of it. Now here we're going to be able to deny another command center, which is super nice. He does have at least 2 command centers up in the top side. At this point, I would love to take the bases back on that bottom left side. I actually never managed to secure that base in the bottom middle. Now here it looked like he moved his Vikings forward without paying full attention. So he actually is going to lose all of those Ravens or all of those Vikings, which is a really big moment. Because the Vikings, if you think about it, is the only unit, the literal only unit that he's had that can kill my Ravens in the dead space. If he doesn't have the Vikings, my Ravens can chill in the dead space forever. Here he's going to lose the SCVs as well as another base. And now my next flock of Ravens is going to maneuver towards the top and try to kill what seems to be his last mining base over there. Now, as you can tell, we have officially ran out of gas entirely. I do still have 7,000 minerals, which means I should be able to retake... Maybe I can even take the base in the middle at some point. But here we go. There's a lot of medevacs over there. I'm actually going to use interference matrix on these, so he can't... that cancels the boost, by the way. If you guys don't know, if a medevac used boost and you use the interference matrix, it cancels the boost, so they just end up being slow. Here he's going to lose another command center. And for what I've seen so far, this does actually seem to be the last command center. He was trying to fight in here with his Marines, but the Marines die, and we have freaking done it. That is the end of the Terran Saga, guys. The final unit that we didn't manage to do, besides medevacs and SCVs. But medevacs obviously never gonna work. SCVs also not gonna work. Though I guess you might be able to tilt someone by putting 12 SCVs and killing them at the start because they get really annoyed. I hit 77 Ravens and 44 SCVs at the end, and that is an absolutely beautiful game. Hope you guys enjoyed this absolute madness. Was really glad to be able to share this with you guys. You know, the proper end of the Terran Saga. Can you beat Grandmaster with a single unit type? And that's gonna be it. Hope you guys had a fantastic time. If you did, give a video a like, subscribe to the channel, and see you for the next video. Adios.